get a little shut-eye. Hang on, I'll be right there. Hang on. Okay, hang on. Sorry about that. Just taking a little nap. No, I'm really pumping these videos out, and sometimes a guy needs to just lay down for a second, you know? Anyway, Dave Hill here, coming at you live from Southern California, sunny Southern California in the summer. And we're here for lesson number 36. So thank you for tuning in. And we're going to talk about arpeggios today as applied to rhythm guitar. We've talked a lot about chord voicings for some time. We've talked about varieties of strumming patterns, but we haven't really talked about arpeggio patterns. So what do I mean by arpeggios? Well, let me just show you what an arpeggio pattern would be. This is what's called a strumming pattern. Right? If you played even with something a little bit more funky, let's say. Right? Even if you comped a little bit like a jazz player might comp, meaning like this. Okay? All of that is similar in nature due to the fact that all the voices are being struck at the same time, whether it's a chord like that or a strum like that or a plucked chord. All the notes are happening at the same time. But when you play an arpeggio, you're breaking up the notes of the chord. Okay? So an arpeggio could be like let's say a finger picking thing where you just go, or not a finger picking, a thumb pick. Or a flat pick, right? That simply doing this, you're playing the chords as an arpeggio. Okay? So there's a lot of situations where you don't want to have that strumming pattern, you want to have the broken notes of the chord. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay? So there's a lot of situations where you want that kind of broken chord technique. And it's simply what it does is it creates a little bit more melody in the chord, right? So if you want to take a chord progression and make it sound a little more melodic, you play it as an arpeggio. So let's say instead of, right, you might play that. There's situations, in fact, where that's actually the typical stylistic way you would play rhythm guitar. And situations that really work well are when you have a time signature or a time meter that gives the feeling of an eighth note triplet. Okay, so you might have heard music where you hear things like this. That's felt as a triplet is because you can hear against this pulse right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1. So instead of going, right, it's much more typical and much more musical to play the notes of the chord broken as an arpeggio. Okay, so simply. That's no harder than just playing the chord and just letting your pick articulate each note individually. So in an A chord, an open A chord would be going to a D chord, right? And you're trying to keep the pattern somewhat consistent so there's an order to it. You wouldn't just pick the notes in any order and just mix them up all the time. That wouldn't sound musical. It might sound silly to do this. That doesn't make sense because it's too random. Okay? So best way to do it is usually start on the low string and go up to the high string and then come back down. So an A chord, once again. And you're essentially doing the same thing twice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So this is typical of slow blues progressions. 50s sort of chord progressions. I mean 1950s oldies kind of chord progressions that you hear associated with early rock and roll, things like that. Okay? And anything that's in a 12/8 time signature, a 6/8 or 12/8 or 9/8, all of those refer to a time signature where the eighth note gets the beat, and there's the top number represents how many eighth notes are in the bar. So a 6/8 time signature equals 6 eighth notes per bar, and the eighth note is getting the beat. So as if we were going to go to C, it would be a bar of 6/8 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the board right here behind me, and I'm going to show you some picking patterns, arpeggio picking patterns, for the chords that we're going to use in our progression. Okay? So you can do this very spontaneously and randomly, but it's good to learn a few key shapes and kind of work out a pattern so you have a basis to connect these in the future, so you understand the style and other examples to go with. Okay? So in this first C chord, I'm just going to grab the open string C shape that we've been playing for a while now. And as I said, it's good to have a repeated pattern. So I go up literally 1 to the 3rd, to the 5th, to the tonic again, and then come back down 5th, 3rd. And then if I were to repeat it, it would just be the same thing again. So I would just play this 2 times to make a bar of, let's say, 12/8. That's what my progression is going to ultimately end up being, a progression of 12/8. So there's the first bar, or the 6 beats of it, and then the second 6 beats. So when you put that together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can kind of see in my picking hand, I'm going using consecutive downstrokes until I get to a certain string. I go down, 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 and then I go up. Okay, notice that. Down, 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 up, 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 down, 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 up, up, up. Because that sort of seems to be the natural flow of the picking hand. If you try to do alternate, it just doesn't feel natural to do it like that. So I kind of believe it's good to go with the direction in one way and then the opposite direction back. So you kind of go with the flow of the strings. Okay, so again, 1, 2, 3. And you're really trying to achieve here a long ringing chord. Okay? You're trying to get the maximum sustain, so you really want all these notes to ring together. Okay? Now, of course, most songs have a number of chords put together to form a progression, so that's what we're going to do now. The next chord in our progression is going to be an E7 chord. Okay? And I've written out a shape for us to use. And this dominant chord that we're going to play for E7 is based off of this C shape, and it's simply taking a C shape and adding the dominant 7th inside the C shape. But this becomes a movable chord, as we know, when we bring it up like this. If we just play, especially if we just play inside these 4 strings, we don't have to worry about barring anything else. The strings that we want are exactly the fingers we're playing. Okay? So that's what we've got now. We've got E7 here, and we're going to use the same picking pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just like we did down here. Okay, so it's consistent. It makes perfect logical sense with our right hand. Okay? So this is very consistent with a chord voicing from the 6th or from the 5th string. Okay? Now what happens when we go to a 6th string root? Okay? So I've written out a pattern for a 6th string chord. Okay? Now we're essentially using 6 notes in our pattern before we repeat. Okay? So if we start on the 6th string root right here, the question would be, do we just continue going, let's say we grab A minor, do we just go 1 and then go up, 3 notes, and then repeat back down again? We could do that, but in this case, the A minor chord is a little on the low side for an arpeggio chord.
sounds okay, but I want to direct you. It's okay to skip over a string when you're playing an arpeggio part like this. So what I've done here is I skip over the E, and I go to the octave A right here. So I'll go like this. You can do that kind of thing. It's okay. You can skip over the root if you want and play the top 3 notes if you want, if you like that. The main thing is just to be consistent with whatever pattern you play. So if I went, or I could go, I don't even have to necessarily start on the lowest tone in the chord. I could start in the 5th of the chord and go, okay, as long as it's the same thing going up and then turning around. Then it sounds musically like it makes sense, okay? So